Welcome to Season 3 of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the bi-weekly show that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada. Our three co-hosts include Ryan Stinn, holder of the highest equipped total in Canada, as well as owner of Unparalleled Training Centre in Moose Jaw, and co-owner of Inner Strength Products, Steve Cassioli, IPF world record holder and medalist, third strongest Canadian classic powerlifter of all time, and owner of Cassioli Strength and Conditioning. Lastly, Avi Silverberg, world bench press medalist, national team coach, and co-owner of MyStrengthBook.com. Today's episode starts right now.
This season of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast is brought to you by MyStrengthBook.com. MyStrengthBook is a web-based platform for powerlifters to build workouts, plan training programs, and assess training metrics that lead to better performance on the platform. Tracking and analyzing training metrics allow you to uncover key trends and insights on what works for you and the precise variables that lead to greater success. Say goodbye to pen and paper tracking and hard-to-use spreadsheets. Say hello to MyStrengthBook. Sign up now for a free trial at www.mystrengthbook.com.
Hello and welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. You are tuning in to episode 3, season 3. We got a great episode here for you. We sit down with Trent Blanchard, the 83 kilo junior from Ontario, who just competed at the Ontario Junior Provincials, where he was the best male classic powerlifter. He wilked 477. Which for context is 7th on the all-time Canadian junior list. Unbelievable athlete. He also competed on the national team this year down in Texas as part of our World Juniors, and where he finished with a world bronze medal in the overall, which is absolutely fantastic. And he talks a little bit more about that when we sit down with him. But first, just a quick roundtable here. Steve, Ryan, how you guys doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, yeah.
Well, let's roll into some of the things that's happened the last 2 weeks. Steve, you first, my friend. You're competing very shortly at a competition called the Pronic Invitational. Now, I find this very, very fascinating because this is kind of a one-of-a-kind event, truly, that's ever been hosted in Canada. I hope that it is a success, and I hope that we can see more events like this. Can you just give us a quick rundown on what this meet is all about and your role in the competition?
Yeah, so it's what it is. It's an invitational. I think it's the top 14 across BC. I don't know if it's 7 and 7 or 14 total, or sorry, 14 males, 14 females, or just 14 total. But it's the top in BC.
Top 14 something in BC.
Top 14.
Based on Wilks.
Based on Wilks. Yeah, so I'm going to be competing in that. And it's, one of a kind. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like an Arnold style, where there's going to be like sponsors, like cash prize and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to get invited to that and just compete against the other top lifters in BC. I know a few of the other ones who think Ramsey's going to be competing. He has Worlds actually in a week or two, and then he's going to compete in that. So that'd be awesome. And then like Randy Yee and a few others in BC there. So it'll be pretty awesome.
So cash prizes, let's talk about the cash prizes. Man, don't skim over the cash prizes. So what are the cash prizes that are up for grabs? Because it's not based on body weight. You're not competing based on body weight. You're just competing on Wilks. It's the top athletes in BC competing on Wilks. So what are the top prizes?
I believe first is like $400 or $500. Second is $250. 300, third 150, fourth 100, fifth 50, I think.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
So
I mean, you don't get much of that in Canada, right, for competition. So it's pretty awesome.
I was just gonna say, if you don't win that prize money, at least top 3, you're basically fired from the podcast.
Sounds good. I'll take that.
No, just kidding. my friend. Okay, turning over to Ryan. You're competing at the World Championships equipped down in Orlando here in a couple weeks. You're putting up some big training numbers. I noticed on Instagram you put up a 280 kilo bench for a double recently, and you're ramping the squat intensities up. I think you're up to 370 or 380, I believe, for a single recently. Can you just talk a little bit about your training going into that?
Yeah, we actually leave here 2 weeks from yesterday, so it's getting really close. Bench hadn't been going well. I had a tricep issue, and it didn't bug me until I put the shirt on, and then it seemed to compress something and kind of fired up the pain levels. So, but this week it was good. Got 280 for a double. It was only going to be a single, but after the first one, I was like, Avi'd want me to do a double, so I should do a double. So, and I just wanted more kilos in my volume for my strength book. So I figured a double would give me another 280 kilos on my total volume. So squat's been pretty good. I think I did 365 last week or something like that. Tomorrow I'll be going squat heavy again. So probably aiming for about 375, which is kind of where I'm hoping to open at. We'll see how it feels. I'll do that for 2 weeks, basically the same plan. I'll do my last warm-up, or I'll do my warm-up schedule exactly as I would at the meet, and then my opener in the gym twice. So that'll give me an idea how it feels on 2 different days, and go from there. It's heavy. Deadlift still sucks, so I can't really pull anything. My hip is just refusing to get better. I got a few theories on what it might be, so hopefully we can get it fixed up at some point. But deadlift is going to be the wild card. I figure if I can squat 400 and bench 300, then I just have to deadlift 305 kilos to get a PB total. So if that's how it goes, that's how it goes.
Yeah, very cool. And you actually, I think in 2013 in Norway, I believe, or one of those years, you placed 4th at the World Championships equipped. Or was that 2014?
Denver in 2014. Yeah, I got 4th. Actually, I got 5th. And then the guy who originally had 4th failed his drug test. So I ended in 4th place, and yeah, it's my best result.
Very cool. Looking forward to seeing how that goes down. Big Canadian team, and we'll recap that when you come back. And for myself, I did something cool this week, guys. I was actually out in a school up in Edmonton with a couple of colleagues here from Alberta, just coaching some high school athletes, running them through some of the powerlifting movements. I actually brought some female coaches along, which was great because when I have done these high school tours in the past, some of the females are a little bit, trepid in terms of getting involved. And, I'm obviously, big guy with a beard and a scary face, so not very welcoming. And having some of these female coaches come in and work with them, it was fantastic to see just the level of enthusiasm. And it was super interesting because we had a girl who was 15 years old, about 52 kilos, squat 205, just randomly. And that was pretty impressive. She kind of stuck around and after class, and she just put it up because she felt like showing us what she could squat. So that was very cool. And other than that, just busy with my strength book. And Ryan mentioned actually that he needed to get his bench volume up, and I just calculated my bench volume for October, and I was up at around 56,000 kilos worth of volume this month for bench press, which is probably something that you get over the course of 6 months. Hey, Ryan? I'm about a 6-to-1 ratio for you.
Can you share with our listeners your squat volume in that block?
Yeah.
So
squat volume.
Okay, my squat volume. Let me just pull it up here, guys. My squat volume was 2,000 kilograms. And my deadlift volume was 3,000 kilograms. So 92% of my volume came from bench press this month.
My bench volume in October, my bench volume was 42,000 kilos. So
okay, I don't want to. Well, it's good then. At least you're tracking.
And that's with 32,000 kilos of squat volume.
Okay, well,
which is what Adam Ramsey does in one workout. So
exactly. All right. Well, we are going to roll into this week's episode with Trent Blanchard. Really excited. Looking forward to playing this for you. Here we go. All right. This week on the podcast, we're sitting down with Trent Blanchard. If you don't know who Trent is, you probably should get Instagram because he's blowing up online and in the world of powerlifting. And Trent, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Good to see you. I really appreciate you doing your hair, looking fresh for the podcast. And the standard is now set for all future junior athletes who come on the podcast Tell us a little bit about how you got into powerlifting. I want to talk about how you competed on the weekend, because you just competed at the Ontario Juniors, but not a lot of us really know how you got started in powerlifting. All I really know is that you were part of the fantastic Ottawa Ravens powerlifting club, which is home to many national level, international level lifters. So can you talk a little bit about that start, and then we'll kind of move the conversation over to how you competed this past weekend?
Yep. Well, I actually started when I went to school up in North Bay at Kenmore College in the strength and sports conditioning program. So the main professor there, Larry Shepard, was on the National Olympic weightlifting team. So I was introduced to powerlifting and weightlifting 5.5 years ago now. And I just fell in love with it right away. I had a push-pull competition. I believe it was a month and a half into lifting. I missed a 70-kilo bench press and a 200-kilo deadlift. So progressed a little bit since then. But I started in that program. And then in second year, I was the co-president for that little club there. And I also helped run the Special Olympics powerlifting team in North Bay. So I did both of those for 2 years, which was absolutely incredible. It's a great way to get involved in the sport. And I'm still actually helping out there now whenever I can get down to North Bay, which is a ton of fun because Larry's done absolutely everything for me. And he's an absolute legend in the weightlifting world.
So you started in North Bay, and then you ended up in Ottawa, and that's where you kind of got connected with a little bit of a bigger powerlifting community. Just talk about Ravens powerlifting a little bit.
Yeah, so I met Eric Willis and Phil Brome when I competed at the 2013 provincial championships that were actually in Ottawa. And then last year, or about a year and a half ago, I ended up moving in with Phil because he was just looking for a place to go. And I ended up training with the Ravens powerlifting club there. I never actually went to Carleton University, but I trained there for quite a while with those guys, getting in lifts with Jackson Spencer, Phil and Eric, like I mentioned before, and a ton of the other upcoming lifters. So it's just great to see how that club has evolved over years because when they started at the very beginning with Eric Willis, Justin Reese, and Phil Brome, there were only a couple of people on the team, and now they're making cuts. They're cutting 15, 20 people now, from my understanding.
Wow, very interesting. Now, you actually qualified. You've been to a number of national championships. You actually qualified for the 2015 World Championships. You actually opted out of that event. And then, I mean, you can tell us why you opted out, but then you went to nationals in 2016, and you qualified again for the World Championships. And this time you actually competed down in Texas on our classic world team. Can you just talk a little bit about those experiences?
Yep. In 2015 over in Newfoundland, it was an excellent national championships there. A great battle with Michael Providza, who's one of my best powerlifting buddies to date. He's actually coached me in a number of competitions now. And I just didn't feel like I was ready to quite hit the world stage at that point. So I opted out of the World Championships in Finland, and I actually ended up competing at the North American Powerlifting Championships that were over in Moose Jaw that Ryan and Ray actually ran. And that was my first experience at the Stephen Fowler meet. And it was absolutely incredible. I'd heard nothing but good things, but it was amazing to actually experience it in person. And then, this past nationals in 2016, it was amazing. Great battle between Willie Lamb over in Alberta. And then when Justin Smith didn't make weight in 74, I can tell you I was shaking in my boots when I found out, because I've looked up to Justin for lifting for quite some time now. So to battle it out on the platform with him when he missed his way in there, it was something else. But no, it was amazing over in Texas. I spent a lot of time with Steve actually at the hotel before and after the meets there. And I definitely want to get back on that international platform soon.
Talk to us about how it was. So how'd you place at Worlds? And we know how you did, but kind of go over your lifts, like squat, bench, deadlift. How'd you place in the three, and then overall?
Yep. So when it came to the squat, I ended up squatting 270 kilos. So I actually took home the gold medal in that. I was favored a little bit in that, but then there was a lifter from Singapore who came up, and he was very, very competitive in the squat, bench, and also the deadlift. So I squatted 270 kilos, which ended up giving me that gold medal. I benched 147.5 kilos, which is about a middle of the pack there. And then deadlift, I deadlifted 282.5 kilos to even out a nice 700 kilo total, which was actually a 30 kilo total PR for me. So
From
that was,
from nationals,
yeah.
which was only about like 3 months, so that's pretty impressive. One of the things I really appreciate about your style of lifting is I think the last like 3 or 4 meets you've gone 9 for 9. Is that right? I mean, you have a very, very high hit percentage. You know exactly kind of your body and what you're capable of. Is that something that you would call a strength? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. I've gone 9 for 9 in my last 3 competitions, and I went 8 for 9 the 2 competitions before that. So I've gotten to know my body over the years now. I've only competed about 13 or 14 times now, but I have a very good feel of what I have in the tank. And I know that if you make attempts, you're going to win. There aren't very many people that win. And I mean, the stats show that from IPF Worlds. There weren't a lot of people that came first that even went 8 for 9. The majority of them came 9 for 9.
Yeah, and you placed third at Worlds there, which was really, really impressive. And I just want to kind of back up because I know you mentioned Ryan hosting the national championships there in 2016. I think Ryan was actually on the platform during your squats. I don't know, maybe Ryan, you can rehash that memory. But I was sitting in the commentating booth and I was live. I was doing the live stream, and it was such an interesting squat series for you at nationals because there was a misload on the bar and for your third attempt squats, and you actually missed that third squat. But just like at the last second, somebody had noticed, somebody came running, jolting from like the back of the audience. And they came running from the back of the audience to just, kind of say, stop, there was a misload. And you actually waited 3 minutes. They gave you 3 minutes to kind of settle down and to come back out and do the next weight. Or the correct weight. And it was super impressive just sitting there in the commentating booth and just like seeing that all go down, because not very many people have a hit percentage where they can come back after like failing completely at a weight that was heavier than they had called for and then making the actual attempt.
Yeah, that was it was a 10 kilogram misload, so 5 kilos aside. So I called for 263 kilos, which was just a 0.5 kilogram PR on top of my national record in the junior and open category. And it ended up being 273 kilos. So I remember just unracking it and thinking, oh, this feels a lot heavier than 263 should probably feel. But I went after it anyways. And the weight there was no chance I could get it up there. And then I believe it was Shane Martin that came running from the back screaming there was a misload. So he came up and then they figured everything out. And that was actually my first missed squat in 9 months, I believe.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I mean, like, if something happens like that, you've never missed a squat, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, it's like coming back from that just on the platform in 3 minutes is kind of crazy. Like in your head, you're probably just like what just happened? Like, how do I get focused and, dial it back in and go out there and hit that? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have Austin Ryan and Eric Willis in the back there. They just sort of sat me down and gave me my music. And I turned on a little bit of music to get a little bit fired up again, and knew that how often do you actually get a fourth attempt in powerlifting? So I better go and make it a good one.
I just want to, at this point in our conversation, I just want to bring in Hank Blanchard because he was down there at Worlds and I met him. He's your dad and he supports a lot of what you do. Just tell us a little bit about kind of his role in your lifting and what that means to you.
Oh, it's not even just lifting. He's been there for absolutely every moment in my life, whether it's coaching me in minor hockey when I was growing up. My parents have just been super supportive over the years, both my mom and my dad. Like right now, I actually end up living with them, and the prep leading into provincials couldn't have been any better when it comes to food and everything. They were super, super lenient with everything. If I asked for a meal, I'd have a meal. And then they've literally come to every single competition they've physically been able to make it to, which it just really does show how much they do care. And I don't think I'd be able to do it without them, because the support that they show is unbelievable. And now I just added
Hank to Snapchat, so I hope to get some snaps from your dad.
Oh yeah, you will. And now he's looking at competing next summer. So look out, future M2 champion right there.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Ryan, do you have any questions for Trent with his performance on the weekend?
Yeah, well, it's not really a performance on the weekend, but in general, as you said, you gold medaled at Worlds in the squat. To look at your lifting, like you're fairly well rounded. Like your squat and deadlift are actually, pretty close. But your squat compared to other competitors in the category is pretty outstanding. Do you think, is there anything you kind of would give credit towards for that? Is it how you started training with the weightlifter, or how you train squat, or do you think it's your leverages?
I don't think my leverages are actually too great for the squat. I do have rather long femurs, but I think a lot of the history through playing a lot of hockey throughout my life and lacrosse as well, I've always had strong legs. Hank B's his genetics for my VMOs, they definitely go a long way. But no, I started high bar squatting, and I was high bar squatting for the first 2.5 to 3 years of lifting in general. So my quads have always been very, very well developed. So I just use that to my very upright position when I squat with a low bar position on my back. So I've just found the sort of technique that works the best for me.
And in terms of training there, Trent, just run us through a little bit of kind of how you progressed your squat over the last couple months leading up to Ontario's, because you had just won Ontario's. And you put up a 272.5 kilo squat, first time over 600. Is that right?
So yeah, leading into provincials, it was a lot of volume leading into it, because I did have a little bit of a setback after Worlds there, where I had a little bit of a tweak in my lower back. So John Stewart, he's had excellent programming for me. I hired him after Nationals this past year, and he prepped me leading into Worlds, keeping me injury free, making me very, very much so stronger, and leading into provincials. And high volume has gone a long way. As much as it sucks, it definitely works.
A lot of people say high volume, but can you just detail what that means? Because does that mean you're doing high reps? Does that mean you're looking at volume over the course of the week, like total volume? What exactly does high volume mean?
I'm keeping my frequency up, so I'm squatting 2 to 3 times a week. There was 1 month where I cut it down to 2 times a week, just so I could give my back a little bit of a rest. So I would have one squat day where I would be doing more so low sets and high reps. So whether they would be just 2 or 3 sets of 7 or 8 reps there. And then the second day, I would just be getting a little bit heavier in the intensity there, bringing the volume down. So I'd be hitting sets of 4 or 5. And then the last day, I would be going a little bit heavier in the intensity again, keeping it with singles or doubles in the reps. But my intensity never really ventured very high. So I was never hitting very heavy weights. When I hit my opener this past weekend, that was my second time squatting that weight since Worlds.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
So what do you think you attribute that to? I mean, a lot of people, have different methodologies in terms of training. They like to feel the weight on their back. They like to, get into the higher intensities, maybe once a week or at least once a month. But it sounds like for you, you just getting up to that opener range very infrequently. Kind of sounds like Ryan.
Yeah, no, it's all about training smarter instead of harder to an extent, because I've just found it's something that's worked very well for me over the past. Of course, there was a time where I would ramp up the intensity and I'd be wanting to hit new rep maxes every single training session, and that did last a little while there, but then your body just needs a break from that. So a couple of times when I was training back with the Ravens, so with Phil Brome and Jackson Spencer, we'd always be ramping the intensities up. And then we never really took a deload. We never really took it easy because we just wanted to keep progressing. And I had a couple of little setbacks there, and I've just learned from my mistakes. So I've had a lot of chats with John Stewart, and we've just sort of mapped it out so that we don't hit those really, really heavy loads until we're peaking for that meet.
Yeah, because I remember in the past, a lot of, I don't know if Avi and Ryan know, but in the past, I remember leading up to provincials and maybe 24 or one of your 2014 meets, you're always having some back problems, right? Frequently, and that was probably was it because of the just the increased intensity over time there?
Yep. When I first started out lifting, my first month and a half of powerlifting training, I would max out my deadlift every week. So with that happening, I wasn't really stressing great technique, so I was having a very rounded back, and I jammed my L4 and L5 vertebrae. And then it just kept happening again and again. And I've just sort of learned from my mistakes there. Of course, it's awesome hitting those huge PRs in the gym, but nobody really cares about your PRs in the gym if you can't put them out on the platform.
No, I think that's a pretty common progression, I think, for most lifters, where it's great, and you can actually carry through that kind of kind of PBs in training all the time until, yeah, you know, unfortunately, it sounds like you, like a lot of people, ended that in injury, right? And
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that they kind of walk away from the sport at that point. But it's good that you've you know, taken the time to learn how your body works, and kind of learn how to train smarter. Like I said, smarter, not harder, right? So that you can have a longer career and obviously get stronger, right? Most people don't get as strong as they can be in 2 or 3 years. It takes them, you know, lots of people say their early 40s is when male strength peaks.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because a lot of the lifters that I do look up to have been in the sport for decades and decades. When I first started lifting, I started looking up to Tom Keane and Ron Strong, Ryan, and a whole bunch of other lifters. And I mean, the masters categories exist for a reason, and I want to be there. I want to be lifting when I'm in M3.
You know, a lot of I'm just thinking about some of my athletes. I'm trying to picture them, you know, listening to this podcast episode and some of the questions they might ask. And you know, there's going to be some pushback from people that would say that, you know, you're just not getting the sort of neural adaptation from handling moderate weights week after week, month after month. You know, at some point you have to get to these higher intensities so that you develop that proficiency. I mean, I'll just open it up to everybody, but maybe Trent, you can take the first crack at it. Like, when would you actually get up into these higher intensities, and why do you feel that all of these moderate sort of loads is aiding in your progression? You know,
well, I feel that when I'm about a month and a half out, so about 6 weeks out, that's when I start playing with the heavier weights there. And I just know that through my past of training, when I've been hitting those higher reps, I'm getting stronger in my legs. Sure, I'm not testing it by hitting 1 rep max, but there are other ways to be testing your strength, whether they're controlled AMRAP, so picking a certain percentage of my 1 rep max and then hitting in as many reps as I can between a certain rep range even. And then that way you can sort of gauge your percentage, because I don't train based off of RPE like a lot of lifters do these days. I still train based off of percentage, but I keep that RPE in mind, because I never want to fully exert myself in my training hitting a full out RPE 10, because it does take a long time to recover from those hard sessions. And I'm still training 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah, Ryan, do you want to add in some of your thoughts to this? Because I know you probably have some opinions here.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I do train at a high intensity a lot of the times, but when I say high intensity, I mean like 85 to 90. I don't usually venture past 90% until the very, very end, and even sometimes I don't do it. I think it's the danger zone.
The danger zone.
You know, where you're starting to try to weigh the pros and cons of having that weight on your back versus the likeliness of causing injury, right? It's not worth it when you're 12 or 16 weeks out for a contest. You're better off to be in that 75 to 80% range where you can get stronger, right? I mean, if you track any kind of rep maxes or velocities, or even just have videos of your training, you can kind of get an idea of if you're getting stronger, right? If I know that I've done whatever weight and I've done it and I can do it faster for the same number of reps, obviously I'm stronger. Or if you do like Trent was saying, AMRAPs, but or like technical AMRAPs, some people describe them as, you know, AMRAP without technique failure, right? You know, if you can suddenly get 6 reps without technique breakdown, then, you know, it's better. So I'd always prefer to stay within a technical percentage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Steve, do you want to add something there?
Touching heavier weights, like what I generally program, even like for myself as well, like leading up to a meet would be like maybe the 3 or 4 weeks prior, you start touching stuff maybe over 85-ish. Like anything, like the only reason why, I mean, most like say intermediate lifters, right? Like majority of people will have like some, like a lot of technical breakdown when they're training and stuff, and they might not like send you videos. I mean, going heavier like once a week, if your form is like absolutely perfect and you can hit a 90% single with absolutely no form breakdown, I don't think that's bad at all. But there's people like doing that and like hitting 90% doubles. But I mean, like those doubles are like knees touching and back folding, and like obviously that's not good. But I mean, if you can hit a 90% single or double once a week with absolutely perfect form, I don't think there's any harm in that. But I mean, there's people that are like pushing that to the limit, right? Like you're hitting those singles or doubles at that higher percentage that are with garbage form. If you can I honestly think if you can maintain that form and you want to go a little higher intensity,
I mean, in the end, it is
about week. It's like, yeah, you might feel it like a little bit like more taxing, but at the same time, if you're maintaining that form and like I said, yeah, if you can maintain that form and speed, there's absolutely like nothing wrong with it. But your main priority is like, yeah, building that technique with the lighter volumes. So then when you get to the heavier stuff leading up to that meet, when you have that heavier weight, you're not going to have any form breakdown, and it's going to carry out a lot better on the platform.
I was gonna say it's about the principle of specificity.
Yeah.
Powerlifting is about doing a single on the platform. So anything outside of doing singles in training is obviously moving away from that specificity. Obviously, it's easier to get stronger without just doing singles all the time, though. So, there's a point in training beyond that specificity. But when you get close to a meet, you have to be training that kind of specific lift in that environment. I always find for myself, when I know I'm doing a double, I kind of hold something back on that first rep. Like mentally, I'm not going to push quite as hard through that rep because I know I have to do a second rep. I'm going to hold some in the tank. So lots of times I'll tell people in training, you're doing a single unless I tell you you're doing a double, because that way, hopefully they can push that single hard, and then I tell them to do a double anyway, and they both look better in the end. Because I find some lifters are more likely to kind of try and hold something in the tank so that first rep doesn't look quite as good. So that's just me. Yeah.
So Trent, like, how would you feel like psychologically then? So going into provincials, that you said you didn't touch anything over your opener, right?
Yep.
A lot of people would like freak out and like, oh, I have to touch this weight on my back and I'm gonna die. So how do you kind of feel like, oh, I just touched my opener? Like how would 600 feel on my back? Like how do you go by that?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that I had going on. When I was warming up, the weights were feeling heavy on my back, but they were moving extremely well. So a lot of my training moved very, very well. I film almost every single set that I do, including my warm-ups, just so I can really resort back. I'm very, very technical when it comes to squatting, benching, and deadlifting. I just try to stay as technically perfect as I can. And then a lot of people actually comment saying, oh, look at your perfect squat technique, look at your perfect bench. And then that set, I'll actually say, that was one of my sloppier sets, because I can feel I'm just not as technically perfect as I should have been. But yeah, leading into the meet, the weights felt a little bit heavier on my back than they usually do, but that's the fastest any of those weights have ever moved before. I opened with 252.5 kilos, and I'd never moved a weight that heavy that fast in my life. So that was a big, big part of it. And I was actually sitting down with Tom Keane and Kelly Branton after I competed, having a couple of beers. And I mentioned that to them. And then they said that I should actually incorporate in some heavy walkouts leading up to a competition, just so I can get used to having that heavy weight, but not actually squatting it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a touchy subject there. Like in my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of that. Cause I mean, like, I understand why you do that. Just kind of get that. All right, you'd actually feel that heavy weight on your back, but you're not bringing it through that range of motion. So that's why I think it's absolutely like pointless to do. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, we had Kelly on the podcast, and he was advocating for those. I think if you can disassociate between bar speed and that sort of feeling on your back, and understanding that, well, if the bar is moving quickly, that should trump anything in terms of how the bar is feeling, especially if you're a confident lifter and you trust your abilities, and you don't start to have that sort of negative self-talk like, oh, it feels heavy and I think if you can disassociate between those two things and recognize bar speed, then that should obviously trump everything that you're doing. I want to actually just talk a little bit more about your competition at provincials. And then I noticed that on the Facebook page, there's a lot of people now commenting and wanting to ask questions of you. So just run us through your bench and your deadlift at provincials. You had a fantastic competition. Again, 9 for 9. Just tell us a little bit more about your experience there.
Yeah, we didn't have the most ideal training session leading up to provincials, actually, because I did have a big move that happened. So I have a new job that I've been running ever since Worlds, and then just getting used to working 9 to 5 job and then going and training afterwards, instead of working at a gym where I can schedule breaks in every now and then. Say I want to train at 1 p.m., I can train at 1 p.m. if I want. So yeah, just leading up to the meet, I was hitting all of the numbers. The speed was there, but my body just wasn't feeling quite right. But I ended up having a fantastic meet. I hit 2.5 kilogram PRs on all 3 lifts, so that ended up being a 7.5 kilo PR. And I know there are some people that wouldn't be very happy with that, but I see it as a PR, and they don't come easily, that's for sure, especially after you've been competing for a few years. I'm very, very happy, and I actually had the heaviest squat, the heaviest bench, believe it or not, and heaviest deadlift of my weight class.
Yeah, very, very nice. It was actually 23, I believe, 83 kilo juniors. Like, it was one of the most competitive categories. Yeah. And not only did you win your class with a 707.5 kilo total, you actually walked away with a 477 raw Wilks, which was the best lifter out of all male junior athletes. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
And who was there pushing you? I know Spencer was went to try to go for the best overall, and there's some kind of friendly competition going on between you two.
Yeah, and Jackson called me out in a little Facebook status leading up to it, saying he was going to out Wilks me because I believe it was last provincials. He out Wilks me by 0.02 Wilks points. So I made up for that when it came around to Worlds there. But then we were very, very close when it came to provincials. He loaded it up for his last deadlift, but apparently he just missed it about halfway through the lift. I mean, Mike Providza was the one handling me in the back there, and Phil Broman, they're always firing me up, slapping me around. And I've been competing against Mike Providza ever since his first competition. So when he and Steve were in their very first competition, I think that was my 4th or 5th. And Mike beat me after he almost bombed out on bench because he just watched videos of Dan Green benching and a whole bunch of other guys in the back. And then at the end of the competition, I find out, I helped this guy not bomb out on his 3rd attempt bench, and he ended up beating me. So, no, it's very, very friendly competition there. Connor Lutz has been pushing me for a long time now. Mark Wasson, just trying to compete with the Open 83 guys. Not only in Canada, but across the world. So
yeah, good perspective there, Trent. I'm going to move into some of these questions here. So rumor has it that you might be moving up to 93. Can you either confirm or disconfirm? And also a follow-up to that question, sumo versus conventional, which do you pull?
Weight class, I will compete as a 93. I'm not going to say when, but I'll move up to 93 eventually because I am 5'11", so I do have the body of a 52 kilogram sub-junior female. So I am looking to put a little bit of size on me, but I'm not quite sure when I'm really, really going to commit to it. I'm not going to be stepping on the scale until around December, so I'm just going to keep eating, keep lifting, and see where I end up for nationals there. But
Now, just hold on. You weighed in at 81 kilos, did you not, though? I
don't even understand how that happened. I was 86.5 2 weeks out. So, and I had 3 steaks and baked potatoes for dinner the week before the competition. I did cut back on the meal, so I was eating a lot of ground turkey and potatoes and veggies. But no, I just did my water load, and I guess it worked a little bit more than it usually does. But yeah, I'm not quite done in 83. There's some unfinished business there, and I haven't even competed in the open category. So I am looking to have a good battle, and Mike Providza has beaten me every competition that I've competed against him in just by a small margin. So I have to make up for that.
And sumo versus conventional, which do you prefer? I know you pull conventional, but have you ever entertained the sumo? I know that you're. I don't know if I've ever seen you do sumo, but which would you prefer?
I do pull conventional now. It's just a much more natural movement for me, but all of my rep maxes from a 4 rep max down to a 2 rep max are all sumo. Back when I had a few back injuries, I did mess around with sumo just because it is a lot easier on your lower back. And I've pulled 605 for 4, I believe, sumo. But my hips and quads just can't handle it right now. I'm not very flexible, so it's something that I need to work on. So a little bit of mobility work, and I definitely do want to mess around with sumo because I was quite successful in the past with it until I went and I was competing at the North Americans, and I went to pull sumo for my opener, and then I couldn't really hold it at lockout, so I dropped it. Second attempt, same sort of thing happened. I ended up face planting onto the platform. So I was one attempt away from bombing out of my first international competition.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the back room, and Phil Rome loaded up 225 kilos on a bar back there. I pulled a conventional. It didn't hurt my lower back. So I just went out on the platform for my third attempt, pulled a conventional, and smoked it. So, times I've messed with sumo, but my hips just can't handle it at this point.
You might have to hit Steve up for some sumo advice. His lift's coming along. If you follow Steve on Instagram.
What's your most embarrassing powerlifting moment? Is Nicola's question.
My most embarrassing powerlifting moment definitely has to be the big face plant at North Americans, because it wasn't a soft one. I caught myself with my hands a little bit, but I was blown away. I was more embarrassed than anything. But I was very confused on why it happened, because leading up to it, I think I opened with 580 pounds or 585. I think it was 265. And I pulled that for 5 reps, I believe, 2 weeks before that. And then for whatever reason, my glutes just didn't want to work for me, and I just couldn't hold it. So the nice big face plant definitely has to take the cake on that one.
So I remember coaching at Worlds, Trent, as part of the junior team. And one of the things that was really interesting and unique that you do as kind of a pre-lift pump up is like hammer fist yourself in the head.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever actually did that, because my music didn't end up working for me, and there's always one song that I listen to before my attempts, and then I couldn't listen to "Ball with the Ball" by Kid Rock, so I resorted to hammer fisting myself in the face, and I actually didn't do that at all at provincials, so I think that's just something for the international stage, and that'll be about it.
It's probably good for longevity.
Yeah, my forehead went through a lot that day.
You just keep it to once a year when you really need it.
Who has the greatest haircut of us three?
Oh,
that's not
good
fair.
question.
Man. That's not fair. I don't have hair.
Fair.
You have the Hank B 007 style.
The greatest do.
The greatest do? I definitely have to go with Avi there.
Oh, man,
I had to. He's a big fan of Fresh Cut Friday. And it was nice. I was able to participate in that with my old barber from Ottawa when I was there for provincials. So you can't bail on Fresh Cut Friday.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is getting Trent Snapchats, because it's always either one, him and his fresh haircuts on Friday, or two, him having a beer with Tub Life.
With bubbles.
With bubbles.
Yeah.
Probably after one of your squat days.
Yep.
Another thing that I've just realized here. And sorry for kind of going back and forth, but you actually, out of the 2383 kilo juniors at provincials, you actually had the heaviest bench in your class.
Yeah, I know. How awesome is that?
Yeah,
that's totally coming up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What do you think attributed to those sorts of that bench progress? Because I know last year I was actually out at Ontario provincials last year, and you just fire reps, quickly, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of like a small percentage jump, up, and it still fires up really quick, but just at lockout, it just really slows down for you. Is there anything that you were kind of doing in training to help that, or?
Absolutely. There were 2 big factors that I had programmed into my benching. One would be board work, because I remember talking to you, and 2 board presses were that sweet spot for me, and it's really, really helped, because my opener this year at provincials is what I failed on my third attempt last year. So I've actually put 17.5 kilos on my bench from last year's provincials to this year's. And that was through, I like to say, the frequency of benching that I was doing, board press, and then also a little bit of dumbbell press in there.
So increasing your frequency, you're benching more times per week?
Yeah. I was only benching 2 to 3 times a week. And now I'm benching 3 to 4 times a week, and just really hammering those triceps, because they are a weak link on me. And board presses are really, really frying them, whether they were different board complexes or even just hitting a few heavy 2 boards.
Yeah, very cool. I know Ryan programs a lot of heavy boards, like almost weekly. Hey, Ryan?
I love heavy boards, man. I think for raw lifters, 2 board is the sweet spot.
Absolutely. I just remember Avi talking to me. I think it was after provincials last year. And he said, man, you have a great squat and a great pull, but your bench, it's not so great. And for a while, I was just saying, I have bad shoulders. Like, I have injured my rotator cuffs a million times playing hockey, whether I was hit from behind or just went to the boards funny. So I just sort of used it as an excuse from back in the day. But nobody cares about excuses. It's all about getting strong. Powerlifting isn't how much you can squat and deadlift. It's about how much you can squat, bench press, and deadlift. So it's the total that matters.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. That's some great insight there. You know, a lot of people focus on either one lift too much or another, only because they're so good at it. And they, you know, even just some of my athletes that, you know, every time some of my athletes do voiceovers on their videos as they send them to me each week. And it's just every week they're just saying, I fucking hate deadlifts. Deadlifts suck, you know, or they just have such a negative attitude towards one lift. And you know, you kind of have to reframe that, because there's nothing you can do. It's part of the sport. And if you always enter your deadlift sessions with this negative attitude, or any one of the lifts, it could be bench press, a lot of people bench press, but you're just never going to turn the corner with that lift until you start to, you know, make some of those weaknesses your strengths. I know that's kind of a cliche thing, but almost more of an attitude thing, right? Like a hungriness to kind of to tackle those changes. We've been recording here for about 40 minutes. Do you guys have any other questions that you want to ask Trent?
Trent, anything we haven't asked you? Anything you want to talk about, Trent?
No, I've been following a lot of the podcasts that you guys have been doing, and I chat with all three of you fairly frequently, and I absolutely love it. I've learned so much just from listening to the podcasts, talking to you guys one-on-one, seeing you guys at competitions, even if we're just sitting down and talking for 2 minutes. It's that's why competitions are so great. I absolutely love them. My favorite part of provincials, sure, the lifting was awesome, but it's just sitting down with a couple of guys like Tom Keane and Kelly Branton, and just hearing the stories from over the years, like Tom Keane talking about old stories, Kelly talking about competitions from 2007 when he was lifting in a church. Like there's, you can't beat that. You just grow those relationships. And it's, if anybody's just wondering on if they are basically just thinking, should I compete? Should I not compete? Should I wait until I have a certain Wilks or total? No, just get out there and compete. I bombed out in my first competition, and that's my only.
Hey man, me too.
Yeah, there we go.
But you know, it's so true. Like, you know, not just if you're thinking about competing for the first time, but you know, even just hey, should I go to a regionals? Like, should I travel all the way to a regionals, or should I go to nationals this year? And some people even, you know, extrapolate that and say, well, should I even go to worlds? But you know, once they qualify, and when you get to these events, you just truly don't know the value of being in that environment until you're in that environment. Just watching some of those, you know, world-class or national class lifters, but also getting the opportunity to go up to these individuals and to ask questions and to, you know, to find out about their, you know, training, their methodologies, things like that. And then having those relationships so that down the road, you know, months down the road, you can just shoot them a message and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, have you tried this? Or, you know, what would you recommend for this? It's so very, very valuable. So I appreciate those words.
I think there's two things I like to kind of go off on that. First off, you talked about, you know, competing and going to regionals or whatever, but I think it's important just to compete more often. I know a lot of people who will do a contest and then like, okay, I'm next year at provincials, I'm going to compete. And I think people don't realize that competition is a real skill. Every competition I do still, I learn something, right? So I think competing frequently, and I think 3 to 4 times a year is a solid number. If you're new, you could even go 5, maybe 6 times a year to learn. You learn so much about yourself on the platform, and it helps the nerves in the future competitions. So one thing I'll say is competing more frequently, regardless if it's a regionals or whatever, is good. And just to play off that camaraderie stuff that you talked about, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but like Abby's first competition, you flew to Winnipeg to compete, right? Like,
oh yeah.
I remember back in the day, I can't remember how many times we all loaded into a van and drove to Winnipeg or drove to Calgary or Edmonton to compete because, you know, in Saskatchewan, we'd have 1, maybe 2 competitions a year. So you had to travel, and it really kind of grew the camaraderie of your team because of the fact that you're always training or traveling together to coach each other and to compete together. So I think, you know, that camaraderie is really a big part of the sport, and you're kind of missing out on it if you don't just go to meets and kind of hang out even, right? So people who want to go to a meet, compete, and leave, you kind of miss out on that that side of it, meeting other people and the fun of it.
Maybe you don't want to meet other people, Ryan. Maybe you just want to be antisocial and bang your head against the wall and lift weights. No, I think that's exactly what Trent just said. There's, that's one of the reasons why, Kelly and I, we kind of sat down and we're like, man, people come all this way to nationals. It's just like, why don't we just kind of have a fun party, like last year in Regina. And yeah, it turned out well, like, just meeting people that you wouldn't otherwise meet and just throwing a little bit of fun into the mix. And yeah, very, very, very true, Ryan. Trent, turning back on you, how can people get a hold of you? How can people find you? Pump yourself up on social media a bit, because we do have quite a wide audience, and some people might be hearing about you for the first time.
Yeah, on Instagram, I post rather frequently. My Instagram handle is Trenty19. That's basically what everybody calls me. Whenever I go to competitions, people come up to me, and yeah, it's basically I'm called that probably more than Trent at competitions. I have the same Snapchat, so Trenty19. And then just add me on Facebook. Feel free to shoot me a message. I'm always happy to chat with people. It's pretty when people come to you and they're just chatting about how now leading into competitions. Like there were some strangers at provincials this past weekend. Somebody came up and said, "Hey man, I've been following you for 2 years. You're a big reason why I'm here today." So just the little things like that, they go such a long way. I'm always happy to chat with people.
Yeah, very good. Very cool. Well, we appreciate you being on the podcast here, Trent. We will definitely be watching out for you in the future. And yeah, best of luck, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Trent. That was awesome.
Thanks.
All right, buddy.
All right. I'd like to thank Trent Blanchard coming on the podcast.
And don't forget, he said
get in contact with Trent at Trenty19, Instagram, I believe, Snapchat, and Trent Blanchard, Facebook.
Steve, you're not letting me get a word in here, which was that. Remember, you said the freshest haircut was. Who was the freshest haircut? I just want to. All right, we'll see everybody next episode. Have a good training week, month. See ya.
Hashtag my strength book.
You've been listening to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, hosted by Stephen Cassioli, Ryan Stinn, and myself, Abby Silverberg. Please follow us on Instagram and check out our website for some great free powerlifting content at www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com. If you like what you heard today, please rate our podcast on iTunes, and don't forget to listen to every other Thursday for a brand new episode.